Now, let's go back to this slide. Let's revisit this argument. The many people died in the tsunami that hit Japan in 2011. Story was reported throughout the world by Reuters News. Okay. Is the argument valid? If Reuters reported the story worldwide, does it clearly prove that many people died in the Japan tsunami? Well, has this news agency ever reported a story that was false and later had to post a retraction? The answer is yes. But how often does this happen? What percentage of the reported facts concerning major world disasters are blatantly false? Very, very few. So, to the extent that Reuters is trustworthy, this argument is valid. Now ask the question, is the argument sound? In other words, did Reuters actually issue this news story? All you have to do is Google it, and you'll find out that they did issue the news story, if you believe Google. Okay, what is a deductive fallacy? A deductive fallacy is a deductive argument that is invalid. It is such that it could have all true premises and still have a false conclusion. In the strictive sense, a logical fallacy is the incorrect application of a valid logical principle or an application of a non-existent principle. For example, consider the statement, people in Michigan support the 70-mile-per-hour speed limit. People in Ohio do not support the 70-mile-per-hour speed limit. I've discovered that the hard way many, many times whenever I go to Ohio and come back with tickets. Okay. Therefore, people in Ohio do not support people in Michigan. Okay, now, think about that for a second. Ask yourself the question, if the premises are true, does it support the conclusion at all? Well, the answer is no. How do I know that? Well, think about it. Just because people in Michigan might support a 70-mile-an-hour speed limit and the people in Ohio support a 60 or 65-mile-an-hour speed limit does not mean that people in Ohio don't support the people of Michigan on anything else or at all. I mean, certainly we have disputes with our children. We don't agree with them on everything. We still support them. It doesn't mean that we reject them entirely and offer them virtually no support. And therefore, this argument is invalid entirely. You can't make such a statement based on these premises. You certainly can't support this conclusion based on the premises provided. It is possible to have true premises and a false conclusion, as we saw in the last slide. Now, let's say that Obama counters Lady Gaga's last statement, and he says, we saw from the yearbook that Stefani Germanotta also had brown hair. Since your hair is now blonde, and since you are Stefani Germanotta, then you must dye your hair. It appears that Obama has just dealt himself a winning hand. He says, hey, it's not just that we had a poodle named Lady Gaga. We found you, specifically Stefani Germanotta, in the yearbook, and she had brown hair. Since your hair is now blonde, you therefore must have dyed your hair at some point. Well, what do you think? Is this an example of a premise that proves a conclusion? Almost. What if Lady Gaga came back with, why do you people care? I'm wearing a wig! What if it's a wig? Even if she had brown hair in high school, she still could have brown hair. And if she does have brown hair and she's just wearing a wig, then again, she never dyed it. Obama was probably recalling that it's not unusual for a blonde child to become dark-haired before puberty. This is a natural phenomenon, but it's unheard of for a dark-haired child to become blonde. This is so rare that it almost never happens. However, he overlooked the possibility of the wig, and unless he had the CIA go over there and pull on Lady Gaga's hair to make sure she wasn't wearing a wig, his argument is rendered invalid. Now, there are two kinds of invalid arguments. You have your inductive fallacy, which is less formal than your deductive fallacy. Let's define an inductive fallacy first. They are simply arguments which appear to be inductive arguments, but the premises do not provide enough support for the conclusion. In such cases, even if the premises were true, the conclusion would not be more likely to be true. With an inductive fallacy, it's not just that your premises are weak. Your premises could be weak or strong. What the issue is even if they were true, does it really prove or does it really lend support to your conclusion? You can have great premises, and they can all be true, but even if they were true, does it really logically follow then that they support your conclusion? If they don't logically support your conclusion, this is an inductive fallacy. For example, consider the statement, I asked 12 of my friends if Casey Anthony was guilty or innocent of killing her toddler, and they said that she was innocent. Therefore, most people feel that she is innocent. What's wrong with this logic? The sample size is too small to support the conclusion. This type of inductive fallacy is called hasty generalization. Hasty generalization. Here's another example of an inductive fallacy. To see how Americans will vote in the next election, we polled 100 people in Creekstand, Alabama. This shows conclusively that the Libertarian Party will sweep the polls in the next U.S. presidential election. Now, what's wrong with this? People in Creekstand tend to be quite conservative compared to the rest of the country. This is called unrepresentative sample. You could also say that somewhat applies to the Casey Anthony case as well. Okay, now for the fun part of today's program. This presentation will have been of no value to you whatsoever unless you're able to come away with it with a good understanding, a good knowledge of the basic vocabulary of logic. If you understand, for example, these 16 vocabulary words, you will be in a better position to analyze an argument and to discern the quality of those arguments. You're going to meet, you probably already have met, many sincere people in debate scenarios. Many of these people are witty, persuasive, some are boring, but regardless, armed with an understanding of the principles of logic, you will have the basis for correctly discerning the strengths and weaknesses of their stated positions. No longer will your evaluation of their positions be based on how likable they are or how funny they are.
An argument such that the premises appear to provide complete support for the conclusion.
A deductive argument is one in which the premises appear to provide complete support for the conclusion.
A proposition upon which an argument is based or from which a conclusion is drawn.
There are two answers for this particular question. A proposition upon which an argument is based or from which a conclusion is drawn, you could say the answer is premise, or you could describe the answer as an assertion. Premise or assertion will work for this particular question.
The size of the sample is too small to support the conclusion.
Hasty generalization is the answer you're looking for.
The informational content of any statement or assertion. To qualify as this, the statement must be capable of being either true or false.
Proposition. Proposition.
The act or process of deriving logical conclusions from premises that are known or assumed to be true. A conclusion reached on the basis of evidence and reasoning.
This is another twofer. You could either say inference, which is probably the best answer. You could either say inference, or you may also have said conclusion. Either one would work with this particular definition.
An argument in which the premises given for the conclusion do not provide the needed degree of support.
This is descriptive of a fallacy. fallacy.
An argument such that the premises appear to provide some degree of support for the conclusion, but it isn't absolute support for the conclusion.
This is an inductive argument. An inductive argument.
Also known as a good deductive argument. It is such that if all its premises are true, then its conclusion must be true.
This is a valid argument. Valid argument.
If all of the argument is valid and it actually has all true premises, then it is known as this.
And the answer is a sound argument. A sound argument.
The evidence or argument that compels the mind to accept an assertion as true.
And the answer is proof. Proof.
They are simply arguments, but the premises do not provide enough support for the conclusion. In such cases, even if the premises were true, the conclusion would not be more likely to be true.
And the answer to this one is inductive fallacy.
Is a deductive argument that is invalid. It is such that it could have all true premises and still have a false conclusion.
And the answer is deductive fallacy. Thanks once again for tuning in. I really appreciate it. I hope you're getting something out of it. There will be at least one more program, possibly two. Hope to see you in the near future.